Hey, bro.
Hey.
Hi. You want to talk today?
Hey everybody, welcome to One Hard Thing a Day. And today we're going to discuss 7 Japanese techniques for overcoming laziness. A lot of these align very well with our principles that we've discussed in One Hard Thing a Day. So we're excited to share these with
Okay, so Dylan, the first principle for these 7 Japanese tips to overcome laziness is called Kaizen. And Kaizen stands for making small improvements. And I feel like focusing on those small improvements is one of the whole purposes of One Hard Thing a Day. Um, I like it that the words broken down, Kai and Zen, stands for change, good, and then they
you.
kind of translate that to like continuous improvement. So like change being good and that it's continuous, it's not like sudden or rapid, it's just small things. And it says to kind of focus on like that 1% better than striving for perfection. Where I struggle with 1% better phrase is I feel like people feel like that has, oh, well, I did all of these things yesterday. So today I have to do all of these things plus one more.
Yeah.
So for you, how do you approach that mentality of 1% better every day
Hmm.
when it doesn't look the same?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I think, yeah, that's something that you really have to check yourself on if you're a very concrete thinker. Um, where you could get stuck in that routine of saying, okay, my 1%, 1% doesn't change. 1% is 1% of 100 every time you look at it. But in practice and in a situation as complicated as our day-to-day lives, that 1% needs a little bit more space to grow or shrink, based on what's going on. So I actually like the translation of change good.
Change good. Well, and I kind of like how you were describing it that like each day we're striving to give 100% of our effort, right? And depending on the demands or needs of our day, like we are giving 100%, but we're still just focusing on being 1% better that day. And so it's not like an adding upon, right? Because then at a certain point we would reach 100% would be perfect. We wouldn't need to try.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the whole practice of Kaizen is doing those small things. So like it gives an example of like making your bed, and maybe instead of making sure it's hotel perfect, it's like throw the covers up. And when you get into your room at night, you'll still be grateful, being like, oh, I made that effort, I made that difference.
Mhm.
And so to kind of identify what that 1% needs to be, um, it encourages like identify what your problem is. What are you gonna work on? What are you gonna approach? What's your current way of doing it, right? Like why is it being done poorly or not getting done? Come up with a lot of solutions. This is another thing we really focus on in One Hard Thing a Day is like your efforts to do that 1% or be better. There's lots of solutions and lots of ways to get there. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
This says you can even test those solutions, right? You can like really look at, okay, is making my bed in the morning really, really effective? Or do I need to start by like pulling up my covers right before I get into bed? And that
Mhm.
still counts as 1% better in change, but that works a lot better because that's more my brain remembers. And then you can kind of measure and analyze like were the efforts that I was doing, were the goals that I had or the focuses I was doing making a difference? Are they creating results? And then when you see where results are, then you kind of like standardize the solution. You can start applying it to other things in your life.
I really like that. What I was just thinking of in that is finding that 1% effort that makes 10% of the difference.
Mm,
Because, yeah, like on the outside, throwing your covers up right before climbing back into bed, it does nothing. But mentally, that may be very, very effective and
yeah.
really give you that catalyst to start changing more quickly or make bigger changes
Yeah.
or
Well,
or
and
even be consistent with that 1%.
yeah. And well, that's what I really like about One Hard Thing a Day. For me, I do 1,000 hard things every single day, right? Like making your bed or doing the dishes, that's never fun. Those are hard tasks. But for me, that one hard thing a day is what feels hard, right? So like some days the dishes don't feel hard, even though they're not fun, but like taking my vitamins feels hard. And so it's like, okay, what am I doing that gives that 1% push, right? Where I'm having that felt sense of difficulty. The second technique to overcome laziness, I really, really like. It's called Shinrin Yoku. and it's the art of forest bathing. Shinrin means forest and Yoku means bath. But I was really excited that this is one of those techniques to kind of help overcome laziness, because I feel like you, Dylan, are so good at the practice of forest bathing.
I really enjoy forest bathing. So I've done some training in um, nature therapy, nature-based therapy. And this is actually one of the techniques that they discuss to really just revitalize our mental health. You know, being outside, being connected with nature, just seeing the natural, for me, it's just seeing all the natural processes of nature. Everything just works, everything has a place. There's nothing out of place. Where if I walk into my house and things are a mess, everything's out of place. So to me, it's just very grounding to just be there. Like if there's leaves on the floor, that's where they're supposed to be, or if they're on the tree, that's where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um,
So one question I had is, here in the Salt Lake area, right, there used to be a lot more nature, a lot more outdoors, and things are a lot more congested and polluted, and lots more people, a lot more houses and cars. Um, how would you um invite people or help people to kind of get that forest bathing experience in a busy city?
yeah, most places you're going to have a park or something like that nearby. I would say if you can get outside where you're actually out in nature, you know, you feel the breeze and hear the animals and or see people, things like that. That's probably still going to be the best place. I would say get into the mountains or get out into the forest. You know, depending on where you live, that may look very different. That's always going to be the best. But at the same time, if you're in the middle of the city that's not very accessible, you know, create a little spot for yourself. You know,
Mhm.
your little tree behind you that brings greenery into
Yeah.
the room.
Well, I wonder, yeah,
Creating
like
that
people,
space.
if they have like a little, like if they live in an apartment high rise and they have a little
Mhm.
balcony, like buy a live plant, right? Buy like a mini pine that goes on your balcony that can survive all temperatures. And yeah, even if you sit out there for your morning coffee in a coat in winter, right? But yeah, I
Yeah.
think some people are going to have
No.
to be creative, but like getting some fresh air and kind of some of those live natural elements that always work.
Well, and I think the thing I've been learning the most, this is more as a therapist, what I've been learning a lot lately is the power of the imagination.
Mm,
Our imagination is so tied to our mental health and to our emotions. And so even just, you know, putting on a YouTube video, there's a million of them, of like just a bubbling brook or, you know, a mountain scene or something like that. And just sitting in that, closing your eyes and just imagining yourself there. Again, I don't think it's ever going to be as good as the real thing, but that can help kind of take that forest bathing and bring it into your home. You
yeah.
know, help you connect still and re kind of just wash yourself with that nature.
Yeah. And I think they were saying that like doing that forest bathing, um, it benefits the mind, body, and soul. So it reduces heart rate, reduces stress, improves your immune system. So it really helps benefit every aspect of our body. So if any of our goals are mind, body, or soul, like the forest bathing is a beneficial practice for any focus in your life.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I highly recommend it. We'll move on to the third one, which is, I hope I pronounce this right, ikigai. Um, and that's your reason for being.
I love that. So the iki means life, and gai describes your value or worth. I really love this concept. For me in my therapy practice, I'm shocked at how many people are kind of stuck in a shame narrative. They've had hard experiences. We all come from dysfunctional families, and our parents have done or said stupid things unintentionally, right? And it can put a little bit of weakness in how we view ourselves. And so a lot of people are like, well, everyone else is worthy of love, or everyone else deserves this, but not me.
Yeah.
And so I love helping my clients reframe that. I met with a client the other day and she was like, oh my gosh, she's like, it never dawned on me that like I am worthy of love just because I exist. I don't have to prove myself. And so I love that this ikigai, it says your reason for being, but the base of it is like focusing on life and having a really strong foundation of your value and worth. And then it said like, when you know your reason for being, you wake up each morning and it's what drives you. And I think that's kind of why one hard thing a day, we're like, figure out what your ultimate why is. Like you have to have something that drives you. So sometimes life is hard and not so much fun. Yeah.
Well, I want to kind of reframe how you said that a bit, if I can.
Go ahead.
Um, how I read that is life is what's worth and what's valuable.
Interesting. All right.
So yes, we kind of discover what our personal drive is, but the fact that we're waking up in the morning is already valuable. That's
Ooh, I
already.
love that. Ooh, I love that. Okay, so yeah, like I think all of that, we combine that together and that really
Mhm.
brings up Ikigai.
Yeah.
Ikigai also has kind of four rules that you follow when you're practicing that. And the first rule is do what you love. The second is do what you're good at. The third is do what the world needs. And the fourth is do what you can be paid for. So when you hear those four rules, Dylan, how do you think you would approach those? Would you try and have like, you know, work and tasks that like kind of fit each of those rules? So like, oh, I do something that I love, I do something that I'm good at, I do something that world needs, I do something that I can be paid for, or do you try and find an activity that encompasses all four of those?
Again, I think I'm going to speak to the ideal. The ideal would be to have something that fits all four of those. I think
Yeah.
if we truly find our purpose, I use Maslow's hierarchy of needs a lot. And so when I think of self-actualization, which is how he describes it sounds like a very similar thing to this. Um, I think it would fit all four of those very well.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I really do feel like becoming a marriage and family therapist fits all four of that for me. I love it. I'm good at it. It fills a need the world has, and I could be paid for it. Um,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I really and having all four of those things, like I get so much joy and fulfillment from what I do. Even days where it's like, oh, I don't want to go to work or I'm sick or I'm tired, I still manage to get through an entire 12-hour day of therapy clients. And I'm tired, but I'm not drained.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that I think that's a good sign that you found that
Yeah.
your reason for being.
Yeah. It only took me, 37,
I still feel like I'm figuring it out. I do love being a therapist, but it's still a work in progress.
right? Okay, so the next concept is called wabi sabi, and it is finding beauty in imperfection.
So the example they use, I can't. It doesn't say here what that type of art is, but there's a type of art where you take broken ceramics and you fill it in um, with gold. In this example, it's gold. I think it can be filled with a lot of different things, but
Yeah.
the whole idea is this beauty and imperfection, that this broken plate can now be sealed back together with gold or other fine things to highlight the beauty in that imperfection.
Yeah, I just looked that up. It's called let's see. Oh, now I just forgot the word. Kin, kintsugi.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. I have used that visualization a lot in my own life. Because there have been times where I have felt just completely broken, right? To the point that like I'm useless and non-functional. And just remembering, like, wait a second, when you take that broken bowl and you piece it back together with gold, like those bowls are so beautiful and they become more desirable. And so yeah, I've used that a lot in as kind of a guidepost for like where I'm going and why I'm doing some of the work and the goals that I'm doing. Is because like all of a sudden those broken pieces and those cracks are no longer a flaw. It's something that just becomes the imperfection becomes so beautiful.
yeah. Well, and that's
Yeah.
something I've had, kind of what you were saying, like I've had to do that for myself and also like with clients. When someone comes into the office, a lot of the times they're in at their most broken state.
Yeah.
Their life, like they feel like their life is falling apart. And the world could even be telling them that they're broken, that they're worthless because of things that they've done or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But being able to see that imperfection and see the potential, as we fill in all those imperfections with gold, this is what you're going to become.
I love that. Okay, so the next tip to overcome laziness is called Shoshin, and that is approaching life with a beginner's mindset. Um, One quote by the author of Zen Mind, A Beginner's Mindset, last name is Suzuki, it says, if your mind is empty, it is open to everything. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few.
Mm.
Yeah.
So where did that show up for you? Either falling into that expert mindset or that beginner mindset.
Gosh, um I think when I finished my master's degree as a marriage and family therapist, I thought that I had to have an extra expert mindset, right? Like I thought I had to know everything and have the answers to it all and be specialized in everything. Um, and as I started my doctoral program, like I tell people all the time, I'm like, you really don't have to be that smart to do a doctorate, right? You have to put in the work and you have to pay for it. That's really all it requires. Because even being almost done with my doctorate, right? That puts me in the top 3% of the world as far as education, right? Which literally would define me as an expert. The more I study and the further along I get into things, the more I realize I know this much, right? Like I know this much, even on the topic of trauma, I know this much. And so somewhere in between my master's and my doctorate, I don't know, I made that switch from be expert to a beginner's mindset. And a beginner's mindset makes everything so much fun because you get to ask all the questions and you get to find what like those like golden nuggets that of expertise that people have that if you're the expert, you would not have thought to ask or you wouldn't have been curious about. So anyway.
Well, and pulling that back into one hard thing a day, I feel like that's such a paramount mindset to be in. Whenever you're approaching a habit, whenever you're trying to make this change, approaching it as if I'm a beginner, I know nothing. I'm still discovering and figuring that out.
Yeah.
It eliminates, or at least mitigates so much of that stress and that anxiety of like, okay, am I doing this perfectly? Am I doing this right? Am I achieving it? It's just
No,
that you're
so
there,
yeah.
that you're
Yeah, I really love that concept and just and then being okay having a beginner's mindset. And it says like trying to clear your brain of that expectation to be an expert and having a fresh, unbiased outlook on things. It's like you'll be surprised what your mind welcomes, right? And that to me as well really encompasses one hard thing a day. Sometimes we don't have a clear vision of like where we want our life to go or like, how all the pieces play together to guide us. But it's like
yeah.
having a beginner's mindset, like you'll be surprised. You'll have no idea where your brain will take you. Um, and and yeah, a lot of it will be scary steps, a lot of it will be overwhelming, but it can be really exciting.
It reminds me of our kind of our mantra of, becoming who you want to be and who you never dreamed you could be.
Yeah.
I feel like that fits that second part where
Yeah,
you'll even surprise yourself as you embrace that, as you have that fresh outlook and unbiased perspective.
yeah, for sure. The sixth principle, the Hara Hachibu, it was my most favorite of these Japanese
Ooh,
tips to overcome laziness. So Hara Hachibu stands for being satisfied but not full. And it's the practice, so they refer it to eating, right? And they're like
yeah,
it's the practice of stopping eating when you're 80% full rather than 100% full. So a couple of reasons like this is impactful to me is because I'm an emotional eater. I have overeaten, lost a lot of weight, and I have to really focus on stopping, when I'm satisfied and not eating to 100% full.
yeah.
But this applies it to like our thoughts and our efforts.
hmm Oh yeah. Again, tying it back to one hard thing a day, we're never pushing you to get to 100% of your effort. It doesn't, you don't have to work out to failure every time for that workout to be successful. Just moving your body, being intentional, um, is enough for what we're trying to do here. And
Yeah.
so I really love this principle as well. Probably because we're siblings, we're both emotional eaters. And so I very much I've had to learn to eat 80%, or it's okay to leave 20% of the food on the plate.
On the plate. Yeah.
Things
Well,
like that.
and like you can come back to it, right? If you think you've eaten to 80% full and then in 2 hours you're like, oh, I'm not still 80% full. It's like, oh, I can do that. One thing it says is like we adapt, like, or like this concept of being satisfied, not full, um, is you can adapt to anything. But going back to the food choices, they're like, be mindful with the choices and quantities of the things that you seek out. So like with food, seek out food that gives you energy during the day and that helps you be like restful and calm in the evenings. And I think as we're focusing on like those one hard thing a day tasks, right? Something that feels really hard. Um, we still get to be mindful with those choices, right? We get to be mindful that the decisions we make support energy during the day and also support like rest and recovery in the evenings or at night. That's been one of my one hard thing a day goals during the day actually is to create a little bit more calm. I'm really good at running on like frantic, stressed out energy. So like I'll be like folding the laundry, I'm like, I gotta get it done, I gotta get it done. Then I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't need to give 100% energy to doing the laundry because I have so much to do. So I either change activities and do the thing that feels more important at the moment, or I'm like, can I take a deep breath? And I'm like, I get to just get this task done at a moderate and healthy pace.
Mm, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, I think that ties perfectly to the seventh and final technique, and it's pronounced ganbaru. And the idea of it is doing your best. That just, for me at least, that completely encapsulates one hard thing a day. Is just learning what your best is and just doing that consistently.
Yeah.
It's very
And
rarely going to be 100%.
yeah, but I think as you kind of what was the life one? I think as you like apply all of this together, um, like the ikigai, right? Your reason for being as you begin to have a better and healthier relationship with yourself and the things that you're choosing and clearing stress with forest bathing and having a beginner's mindset, you you know, in your heart when you're doing your best.
Yeah.
And that's again why I've been working on like I'm doing my best. I don't need to be a frantic basket case. Like what I'm doing is enough. And I love how it describes doing your best as being persistent or having tenacity
Mm-hmm.
to keep going through when times are hard, right? It's a perseverance to accomplish your goal. It's not perfection. Doing your best is not perfect. Doing your
Yeah.
best is persistently moving through hard times to accomplish your goal.
Yeah. I just want to pause real quick and just remind people, if you're liking the content, please subscribe. If one of these stood out to you, we'd love to hear about it in the comments below. I wanted to go back a little bit, back to that forest bathing, because I think this is I want to highlight a piece of this where you were saying you're running on that frantic energy. Sometimes we think our best is going to be whatever maximizes our effort, whatever maximizes our accomplishment. But that's not necessarily always the case, because one of these steps was forest bathing. It was getting out and being in nature and just sitting and letting that energy soak over you. And that allows you, though, that's that healthier choice that energizes you.
Mhm.
So I wanted to just kind of give that perspective, um, that viewpoint there of that piece as well.
Like doing my best means I get to have a lower heart rate and reduce my stress and take care of my immune system and have fun, right?
Yeah.
And relax, be lazy as people call it these days. So yeah, I really, really like resonated with all of these seven
Yeah.
techniques. And what I love is how naturally I've seen them start showing up in my life as I have put into practice the things that we're teaching. Um, and then having them kind of written out and defined and described so clearly was like really fun. And I've put a lot of thought into them right lately, like, okay, what concept of this do I need to focus on? And actually I did choose forest bathing.
Mm.
Because I've been really good about going on a walk outside every day, except for the last 2 months, which have been crazy. And I've like done, movement or exercise every day, but I haven't prioritized like getting away from the craziness and busyness of life and just being outside in fresh air. And anyway, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it makes a really big difference.
So the one that's really been standing out to me lately has been the Hara Hachibu.
Mm.
That idea of being satisfied and not full. And not applying that to being hungry, but just applying that to the efforts I put in. Because I can very much get stuck in that achievement mindset or being the best. And if I'm not doing it exactly right, or if my effort is not the same as it was the day before, I can very easily start beating myself up. Um, but being okay with that 80% effort, or stopping when I still feel good and not pushing to when I'm exhausted.
Stopping, right? Like I am, I am full and satisfied. I have enough to keep going on and move my life forward. I don't have to be stuffed and sluggish and weighed down, like, or unbuttoning the pants with my effort. No, yeah, I love that one.
That's a good one.
Okay, well, thanks for tuning in with you guys again. Leave a comment below telling us which one of these 7 tips or techniques stood out to you. Either it's one of your favorites that you practice really naturally in your life, or one that you maybe didn't realize and you want to start incorporating.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you later.
Bye.